Everyone knows that I am all about those retro formats on this channel, but as everyone also knows, pretty much every retro player out there started as a player of the TCG. I was no different. I played the TCG competitively for about 10 or so years. I ended up quitting in around like 2018. I think it was in the middle of Spiral format when I officially quit the game and pretty much never looked back since then. It's worth noting, right to start off the video, that I don't think the game right now is as bad as it was during Spiral format. I think in general it's fair to say there's been a pretty noticeable increase in the quality of gameplay in the last like year and a half-ish or so. I mean, we're currently in like a tier 0 format, but earlier in 2022 there was like some pretty alright formats, I mean, relatively speaking. I would say it's fair to say that the issues with Modern have like alleviated a bit maybe, but they haven't really like gone away to the extent that I'd actually want to play the game again. So that's kind of my main contention here. We're going to be talking about the factors that led me to quitting the game in the first place and the factors that kind of prevent me from coming back. So there's sort of two prongs of criticism here. Okay, before we get into this, I want to clear some things up. This is not going to be some unhinged boomer rant type of video. I really need to like go over some of the like myths you'll hear from more casual type people who never really played the game like competitively, definitely haven't played Modern competitively, whose main like source of memory of Yu-Gi-Oh was like playing on the playground with their friends. And you hear a lot of dumb crap from these people. They're the type of person who like loved Mystic Mine and probably quit the game because it got banned or whatever. So the first sort of thing you'll hear about Modern is that special summoning and the extra deck specifically ruined the game. And this isn't really accurate. I'm going to go into it later. There's one extra deck mechanic that I think kind of played a huge role in ruining the game. However, I'm talking more about the kinds of people who like talk shit on synchros and exceeds. Like, these are the problem. Some of the best formats in Yu-Gi-Oh! In history have synchros and exceeds. Honestly, like, these are some pretty interesting, cool designed extra deck mechanics, and I just kind of like the extra deck in general. I think it's something that really sets Yu-Gi-Oh! Apart from other games. The fact that you can like combine cards from the main deck to summon these more powerful ones from the extra, I think that's really neat. So I definitely wouldn't get rid of it. I think my ideal version of the game would have both synchros and exceeds. Maybe not pendulums or links, but that's a whole different discussion for a different portion of the video. But in general, like, adding more extra deck summoning mechanics such that we have several is not what broke the game. Like, that's just not it. That's just not the fundamental problem at all. And like I said, I actually think that's pretty neat and interesting and healthy for the game. The second, this might even be an even bigger lie, is that Modern takes no skill. Modern honestly probably takes more skill than retro Yu-Gi-Oh! Does, to be completely honest. I feel like a noob trying to play Modern format. And I mean, I don't even know if that's due to just inexperience or whatever. I think it actually is a very skillful format. Maybe not more skillful, I don't know. I don't know for sure. I think in general, people who obsess over skill are kind of wrong to obsess over the skillfulness of formats, because if you really just want to play a skillful game, you should just not play a TCG, you should go play chess. That's my take on that. But it is definitely incorrect to say that Modern is a skill-less format, or even that it takes less skill than retro. Modern is incredibly skillful. There's a lot of like nuances and interactions and stuff that you have to figure out. So there's just absolutely no truth to that statement. And finally, you'll hear these two a lot, that Modern is just too convoluted for new players and too expensive for budget players, basically. Now, these aren't really false, but it's just like false to claim that the game has gotten more convoluted or more expensive over the years. Like, the game has always been convoluted and expensive. What made Yu-Gi-Oh! Convoluted is not like how many extra deck mechanics you have to learn. Like, that's really not that hard. That's just scratching the surface. The real complexity of Yu-Gi-Oh! Is like this infinite iceberg of like rulings and game mechanics that like exists beneath the surface, that you have to like learn all of that crap to be an optimal player. So it's never really going to be a game that's friendly to beginners or whatever. You just gotta like get into the grind and learn everything, and that's kind of just always how it's had to be. So I don't really accept that the game is more convoluted now than it was. Like, card text being longer is mostly a symptom of power creep and whatnot, which is the actual more fundamental problem with the game that I'll get into later as well. But I don't really think it's that much more convoluted than it ever was. Like, learning the sub-steps of the damage step and whatnot is just always going to be a huge barrier to entry for anyone who just doesn't want to, like, spend a huge amount of time on the learning curve of the game. So it's not really more complex, and it's not really more expensive either. Like, there are plenty of retro formats that were expensive as shit. I mean, you hear all these stories about how secret rare staples were like $300 plus, and I was there, and I can confirm that it is true. Dad was like $300 some dollars. Tour Guide was $300 some dollars. I mean, if you wanted to build a Teledad deck in a Tier 0 format, it was probably like $1,500 or some $2,000. I don't even know. But, I mean, they're expensive cards now. Honestly, I think if you want to build a budget deck, you can probably do it more easily now. It probably depend on the format, obviously, but I don't think the game is dramatically more expensive than it ever was. So that's just the segment of the video where I'm debunking a couple common incorrect, I think, criticisms about Modern. Now we're going to get into me actually fully bashing Modern and telling you what's really wrong. Firstly, why did I quit in the first place? Well, I think it should be kind of obvious. I quit in the middle of a Spiral format, one of the worst formats of all time. What really made me quit, in like the simplest terms, Link monsters. Like, you quit Modern because of Pendulum monsters. I quit Modern because of Link monsters. We are not the same. Why? All right, Pendulum monsters, I get it. They're stupid. They are poorly designed. They shouldn't exist. They wouldn't be in my ideal version of the game. However, Pendulum monsters, frankly, just did not have a long-lasting impact on gameplay. Like, you could play Modern today without even ever reading a Pendulum card, and you'd probably be fine. Honestly, I'm not even joking. Like, they're that insignificant to gameplay now. Link monsters, however, forever broke the way the game was played. These things are insane. There's like several major gripes. First, the minor gripe that I have is that they don't have a defense mode. Now, this isn't really important, to be honest, at least not to me, but it's like worth noting that this is just really stupid. Why don't they have defense mode? Like, I get not having levels is like weird and breaks the mechanics of the game, kind of like Exceeds, but at least you can think of like there's a reason why they did that, so you can't like synchro or exceed with them. I mean, the fact that you can just still link climb with them is already insane though, and it doesn't really matter so much, but the fact that they don't have defense mode is just super weird and unnecessary. But that's not really the important part. The important part are two major things about Link monsters. First of all, they're just completely overpowered in their design in terms of how easy they are to make, and like how you make them by just sending monsters on your board to the graveyard. This can trigger so many grave effects and whatnot. Like, the Link mechanic just inherently being insane by design broke so many cards. Like, if you weren't playing at this time, you might not remember, but there's at least like, I don't know, 24 cards on the ban list that are only there because like the Link mechanic itself broke them. Like, I don't know, just like think about it. Just think about how many things are banned for the sins of Link monsters. Before we even get into the sins of specific Link monsters like Firewall Dragon and Hulk, like, there's so many things that are just banned because they're like token generators, and that's just overpowered as shit now because you can summon Links in like Level Eater because you could just link off with it over and over again. Well, Level Eater, conceivably you could imagine a universe where that card got itself banned. And Dandelion, I mean, just like not even banned cards, but just like Scapegoat was limited for a long ass time just because like it was so insane being able to like goat and then just summon a bunch of Links, you know. So just the inherent design of these is so bad. You can like, it's kind of like synchro summoning, but they're just completely like infinitely more generic. You get all the benefits of just being able to send guys to the graveyard, and all you have to do to summon any of them is just put something on the board. It's so goddamn easy. Like, you don't need any fusion card, you don't need any tuners, you don't need to do anything worrying about levels. Like, it's just, there's no downside whatsoever to the way that they are made. And then the other issue with Links, possibly even bigger than that, is like the actual card design that was used with a bunch of the Link monsters that were made. Konami just decided to create this huge wave of like extra deck extenders in the form of these insane Link monsters Now, for those of you who aren't familiar with this term, an extra deck extender is something like Laval Chain or Ancient Fairy Dragon or something like that, where you can go into it. You can like go into it from your extra deck, and then it lets you keep playing. Essentially, it lets you like special something, search something, do something to extend your play. It's a pretty self-explanatory term. Now, cards like this are traditionally insanely overpowered and almost always get banned. As you can see, like a huge portion of these cards on the screen are banned, I think. But it's just like, and Link Monsters, Link Era in general, just unleashed a tidal wave of cards like this that let you just like extend your combos through just super easy to make extra deck monsters. And this has led to a phenomenon which I refer to in this video as consistency creep, whereby pretty much every deck just like has access to some sort of combo line or whatever that they just do on turn one, and they're pretty much going for the same thing every turn one, because you just go into a card that searches your next combo piece that gets you to your next step, and then you end on whatever board you're intending to end on. And like Link Monsters and extra deck extenders associated with them are super to blame for that. So this is my first major gripe. I just hate the design of Link Monsters. I hate everything about Link Monsters, and I'm never interested in playing any version of the game that has these stupid things, because they are so insane, they are so overpowered, they're so easy to make. They're just, like, by far the most offensive summoning mechanic in the game. Nothing even comes vaguely close for me, honestly. Like, there are people out there who hate Pendulum more, and I don't really see any actual, like, logical reason for that, besides just you quit the game because of Pendulums back in 2015 or something. But Links are just infinitely worse for the game than Pendulums. It's not even close. It's, like, not even close. These are fundamentally what broke the game, like, for good. I mean, you can argue power creep was, like, crazy in the Arc 5 era before this, but these just took it up to, like, 11. Like, I remember when Links first came out, and people were speculating about how, oh, this is Konami's plan to slow the game down. It was such a meme. Like, it did, not only did Links not slow the game down, they, like, accelerated it to fucking light speed. You know, it's just... When they came out, it was just, like, non-stop crazy Link combos, Firewall Dragon loops. I mean, and that's not even, like, mentioning stuff later on with Summon Sork and Needle Fiber. But most of these cards here are not legal in the current format, but they're just kind of representative of the major, like, issue that emerged with Link Monsters. And, you know, it's not totally gone away just with the banning of the super generic overpowered ones. There's still tons of, like, crazy extra deck extenders like this that have proliferated throughout the meta, and because of that, the game will just never be the same, and that's kind of sad. Alright, now we're going to be talking about some of the more base problems of modern gameplay that have been an issue since, like, 2015-ish, and are probably going to continue to be an issue roughly forever until the game is dead. So, firstly, turns just take too long, and there aren't enough of them. This is a common criticism that you'll hear from pretty much everyone about Modern, and it's absolutely true. Like, most turns, I don't know, turns aren't particularly long in the current format compared to where they were previously, but they still take like 5 minutes, which is crazy. And it's absolutely the case that most games are settled in just like a few turns. You know, there are none of these long-ass 12 to 18 to more like turn games in modern Yu-Gi-Oh! That shit hardly ever happens, and it really robs the game of, like, the back-and-forth element that's kind of inherently necessary for a turn-based game. Like that element of you make your play, then I make my play, then you make your play, then I respond, and it goes on and on. That's not really a thing. It's more like I make my opening move, then you make your big push into my field, and then I try to kill you, or I fail to kill you, and I probably lose at that point, and maybe, like, a couple turns on top of that. But most games are really short in terms of turn count. Like I said, rare to see games go, like, 10 turns or longer. That pretty much never happens. And there's a lot of copium about this, too, among modern players. They'll, like, post clips of Scientist FTK or something back in a format no one ever even played in, to try and prove that Yu-Gi-Oh! Has always just been this insane, and it's always had this crazy solitaire element. And stuff like that has existed, but it was, like, vanishingly rare before, you know, 2016-ish or something. Like, that stuff pretty much never happened. Like, there was Frog FTK, I guess. Maybe in, like, Worlds 2011, there was, like, Plant decks would spend 5 minutes synchro summoning and activating Pot of Avarice or something. But like stuff like this was really an aberration back in the day. Like the idea of just sitting there and popping off for like 5 minutes. And like the issue isn't even that decks pop off, it's that they pop off on first turn, and like the format actually incentivizes you to go off on your first turn. Like in Teledad format, that was a crazy fast format. Like you could special summon a bunch of guys, but you had to be crazy to just do it turn one because you would lose the duel, right? Whereas in Modern, with the direction of card design, you're actually like incentivized to vomit your whole hand onto the board, because there's all these like cards that allow you to disrupt or negate and get like free pluses on your opponent's turn when they're trying to play into your field. And that stuff didn't really exist back in the day. Back in the day, you would just get clapped back if you tried to overcommit like that, and you would get punished for overextending. It's just a fundamentally very different thing, and I wish people would acknowledge that. So this is definitely a big issue, and a big part of that issue is what I referred to earlier as consistency creep. The fact that like you can just have one card starters into your like full combo. Basically, Link monsters and extra deck extenders are a big element of that, but sometimes they're not even. Like some decks can just go off anyway. I mean, this is just an issue in general with the direction of Modern card design. Like hyper consistency, I just do not think is a good thing for the game, and unfortunately, it's kind of like almost a necessity with the way that the game is played now. The decks just have to be able to like pursue this sort of same first turn line that they can just always get to via multiple searches and going into the same extra deck monster or whatever. So I think that's a big flaw in gameplay that a lot of people don't like. Another issue I'm going to be talking about here is what I call the like power creep feedback loop. Obviously, fundamental to all the issues with Modern Yu-Gi-Oh! Is power creep. Cards just do too much by themselves. It's a big issue, a big part of why like card advantage doesn't matter, so long as you can actually, because you can just plus so much that it doesn't matter. Like so long as you can actually play the game and do your combo, you will be able to win from that point if you can just get through whatever your opponent has. Now, obviously, I'm not saying card advantage doesn't matter at all. There's still like pseudo control decks around, like the one in current format, Tearlament. It's like I'm pretty sure considered a control deck. But understand that these decks would be considered combo decks in like any other format or any other game, rather, besides Yu-Gi-Oh! Like they're only considered control decks within the context of Modern Yu-Gi-Oh! They are not considered control decks by like any casual observer from another card game. And I think that's a fair argument to make. But anyway, this direction of power creep in general has led to like this sort of triad of almost like a reaction to power creep, which I think Farfa made a video where he talked about this or something, like how the game just bounces between these three things to try and deal with like the way the game is played now, which is monkey flip representing floodgates, which obviously not fun, hand traps, which are kind of just like a band-aid to deal with like the speed of the game, and like insane board breakers, which I view as really just obnoxious sacky cards like Dark Ruler and whatever that just steal games. Of these three, hand traps are probably the least objectionable on here. They're kind of just a symptom of a problem, but all three of these things are just super annoying and like a major symptom of how the game is played now. And they're kind of just always going to be around. So, I mean, if you don't like this type of stuff, you probably just shouldn't play Modern. And I'm not a fan of most of it. Like I said, I can tolerate hand traps, especially like the quote-unquote fair hand traps that just like go 1-for-1 with something like Ash or like something like that. I can tolerate those, but then there's like the unfair interactions with stuff like this, like Maxi over in the OCG or Lancia just like ending the turn of a bunch of, or some decks anyway, like dinosaurs or whatever. So there is an unfairness element there too as well. But ultimately, like, the problem here is, like, cards getting more powerful forces other cards to also get more powerful, and this just pushes everything in, like, a sackier direction in general, I think. Not saying, once again, I'm not saying that Modern is skillless, but it's definitely not a good trend. So these are my major, like, issues that I have with how the Modern game is played. I tried to summarize it as like best and as succinctly as I could. I hope you guys like sort of understand and don't think I'm just an idiot. I haven't played Modern in a while, so I might have said something cringe that didn't make sense or was wrong about the Modern format. You might have to tolerate that. But overall, I think my criticisms of Modern are pretty fair and pretty nuanced compared to a lot of what you'll hear, like what I referenced earlier in the video. So let me know what you think about it. I'm probably just going to be playing Retro forever. There's like a vague chance that I could start playing Modern again if things like really started going in a good direction and stayed going in a good direction for a long time, maybe. But I kind of doubt it. I think I've pretty much abandoned Modern Yu-Gi-Oh! And it's for these reasons that I just think they're never going away. Is the thing. Like I just don't see how you could put the genie back in the bottle, with respect to all of these things, especially Link monsters. I just don't see how I could ever tolerating a version of the game that has Link monsters. These are like my most hated thing in all of Yu-Gi-Oh history. So anyway, if you have comments or disagreements, be sure to let me know below. Be sure to leave a like if you agree with what I said. So that's all I got for this video, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace out.